Those men were shot, just shot in self-defense, boom, boom, boom. You know, they weren't cut up, they weren't sliced up, no OJ jazz, you know. And he said, I did the most horrendous crime in the whole wide world.
Not true?
I guess not. All they were was shot and left. If it was a horrendous crime, why didn't I shoot them between the eyes, cut their penis off, stick it in their mouth, you know, do all kinds of gross stuff? All they were was shot and left, you know?
Hey everybody, this is Creep It Real, and I am Ashley.
And I'm Bianca.
And we're your family now, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
You were on a social media tear this morning?
Yeah, I did do a little... I don't know what happened. I know what happened. I went to Caribou this morning, and I got a depth charge, which is a coffee with a shot of espresso.
Yum.
It was so good, and I've gotten sweet Cold Stone Creamery.
Uh-huh.
Cream for the coffee.
Oh, that stuff is so amazing.
Yeah, because after the other day, I was like, I can't trust you guys with the hot crafted press right now. In these times.
In these troubling times, these coronavirus times, I can't trust you with a crafted press.
No, so I have to just get the coffee with a shot of espresso. And I think I got home and I was just like,
pew, woo, pew, yeah, you were on a tear. I was like, oh shit. I saw like Creep It Real posted to their story, Creep It Real posted to their feed. I was like, oh my God, Ashley, you are.
Too bad I can't spread it out a little better, but it was
it's a good one. It's a good one, especially right now. I'm sure people are bored.
Yeah.
If they're quarantined or whatever, they're looking for something to do.
Yeah, so we're all trying to do that. And in that vein, I guess you could say, we're going to say a couple things about some small businesses or other places where we need to kind of send some positive energy or perhaps even dollars today. So I talked to Kelly over at our Patreon, who is one of our dedicated cult members, and she said that people need to try to find ways to donate blood because blood drives are being canceled and community resources are not being used. So I don't know how. I didn't look it up and how people could do that, but I guess if there's some way for people to donate blood, I mean, it's probably a hairy situation at this point.
For sure.
If you can do something, that's one thing. There's also in Riverton, Illinois, there's Kent's IGA, which is a small grocery that have been working their buns off to provide for their community. Anybody over in that area, head over to Kent's IGA in Riverton, Illinois. One of our listeners works over there, so just saying hi to you guys over there.
Another one of our listeners, Rosie, her handle on Instagram is Ghoul Stitch. And the link for her stuff is on her bio. She does a lot of cross stitching. So if you're interested in any of that, any of her artwork, definitely go check that out. Definitely supporting artists is going to be a huge thing right now too.
Right. As well as Andrea, who works over at Rachel Marie Designs. That's on Instagram, Rachel Marie Designs in Commerce, Michigan. They do jewelry, and she was saying that they're still working in the the jewelry lodge. I don't know what you call it, but she's over there working on the jewelry.
The Jewelry Palace.
Over in the Jewelry Palace. So Jules, our friend over, I don't know how you say her Instagram handle.
25A out 1991.
There you go. By memory. So she was talking this morning about www.mask-match.com. They are creating masks for at-risk people in hospitals, and that's something that I think is a super important situation. Yeah, going on right now. I know I have a lot of family members that work in hospitals, and they're just reusing little shitty masks that aren't even really intended to be preventing the spread of.
Well, and the second thing is I've learned a lot from her feed because she is being very vocal about it, like mask use. Those masks are only supposed to be used for 30 minutes and they're using it all day for multiple days.
Yeah, that's awful. I mean, it truly is. These people have no choice whatsoever about going to work, and they're wanting to go to work because they want to help people, but also they're putting themselves at risk every day.
Absolutely.
So,
this kind of is really weird because I know somebody who And I've never known somebody who was in close proximity with something like something that could happen.
Right. Well, they're definitely anxiety-inducing times for all of us, so we understand, and we're here to, provide you some entertainment, hopefully.
Maybe some levity.
Maybe even, if you want us to just give you a shout-out on the next episode, just let us know, if you have a small business that you would like to have us talk about on the show for a second, we're happy to do it, so we're here for you.
Yeah. Okay. On the same vein as Rosie's cross-stitch company, we have the Hoop Doggy Dog Shop. That's Chris and Laura out in the UK. Their website is www.hoopdoggydog.etsy.com. They actually sent us the cross-stitch of our logo.
It's amazing.
And it's incredible. Yeah,
if you've seen our Instagram, it's there. It's beautiful.
It's also on their Instagram twice. Chris sent us one, and then he was like, yep, I'm going to make myself one now.
That's pretty awesome.
Which is absolutely incredible. Mm-hmm. And the last one is Shannon. She is at Drawn by Munster. Her link is in her bio as well. She does a lot of really incredible artwork as well. And if you want to shop her art, that's where you can do that.
Yeah, go forth, everyone.
Absolutely.
We just want to be able to support any small businesses, or, I wish my sister-in-law, Casey, and so is my other sister-in-law, Stephanie, working as nurses in the hospitals right now in the ER in Dallas, pretty much. So they're just being worked to the bone, and also just, they don't have the supplies. Like my sister-in-law was saying, where are all these supplies that the president keeps talking about that they're sending to us, because we haven't seen one of them?
Oh, no. So thank you guys so much for the response on our part 1 of Aileen Wuornos. We have had a lot of people messaging us, letting us know how excited they were for part 2, which me too. And we've received a couple new 5-star written reviews and a few new patrons. Mm-hmm. So thank you so much for your support, and we love you.
We do.
We are your family now. Mm-hmm. And we now present to you Aileen Wuornos, part 2. When we last left Aileen, we learned about her horrendous childhood, her upbringing, and discussed her intelligence, or really is it just as a woman having intuition, regarding her manipulation of men, and that eventually she started having relationships with women. The person who is tied to Aileen the deepest, of course, is Tyria Moore. And I say of course because if you know anything about Aileen Wuornos, you know what happens at the end. We didn't go into their relationship too deeply last time, but of course, here we go. Tyria had become a born-again Baptist in 1984, just 2 years before she and Aileen met, and tried to share her religious beliefs with Aileen to no success. Aileen was able to recite scripture, but her actions were, of course, in conflict with Tyria's own actions and the Bible.
You mean murdering and...
Yes, small deviation.
Things like that.
Tyria came from a God-fearing family and, of course, had her own conflicts with scripture, like her being in a lesbian relationship. For a while, Aileen and Tyria lived together at the El Caribe Motel where Tyria worked, but because money was scarce, Tyria approached a friend she knew from church and asked if she could rent a room with the understanding that Aileen and Tyria sleep in separate beds.
I mean, God, is that at a time when you had to explain yourself when you were renting rooms?
I mean, it seems so. Well, I mean, the friend is from church and she was like, hey, you can't be in my house if you're a lesbian.
Okay.
Her friend told her that the scripture strictly forbade homosexual or lesbian relationships and said, the Lord wants you to be with a man, and that's why you're here.
Oh, that's why you're on this earth, to be with a man. Mm-hmm. Let that man plunge his dick into you, and that is your purpose in life, everyone. Just think about that for a moment. Okay, now I'm understanding why Aileen wants to murder everyone.
Aileen, of course, had it with Bible thumpers and, of course, men. And she flipped on the friend and told her, I was married to a man and he beat me. I am this way because of men.
Granted, she beat him, too.
If we all remember, this is the exact opposite of the truth.
I'm sorry.
She had been married to a man, but she beat him. So, yeah. So then the friend asked the two to leave her home at once. She liked Tyria and wished she could help her, and confided to Tyria before they left that she thought that she should tell Aileen to just go her own way.
You should go your own way.
Go your own way. You know, weirdly enough, for some reason, Fleetwood Mac like is playing in my head
All
as
the
I'm
time?
writing this.
Oh.
Yes, all the time. I'm just,
I
no.
felt it, dude.
You did.
I'm telling you.
So then they did, and Aileen was fine. She got mental help and never killed anyone. So thanks for listening, guys. We will be back next week. Well, for a while, life for Aileen and Tyria was great. Aileen called Tyria her wife, and Tyria quit her job as a motel maid for a while Aileen supported her with earnings from her sex work.
Which, I mean, from Aileen herself,
Yeah.
she barely made
Exactly.
shit doing that. So that must have been a bleak living.
Yeah, absolutely. At first, of course, Tyria's departure from her employment was not really a major financial setback because Tyria only earned about $150 a week, while Aileen could make that much in a day if she worked hard enough.
Well.
As always, though, their passion cooled a little, and money began to run short. Tyria still followed Aileen like a puppy, though, from cheap motel to cheap motel, occasionally staying in barns or the woods in between. In March of 1987, Tyria bought Aileen an old Corsair trailer. It's not really known how, since they were very short on money, and Aileen claimed she financed it, but again, she didn't really gain that much from her work, and Tyria claimed she borrowed the money from a friend, so realistically, that's probably the most likely story.
Yeah. Or maybe her parents financed it because they were like, what are you doing down there?
Yeah. They're probably worried about her.
Yeah.
Their first and only stop, really, in the trailer was the Ocean Village Camper Resort in Ormond by the sea. But again, their stay was short-lived.
It sounds kind of nice.
It sounds beautiful. They became the talk of the trailer park as they constantly had hippies and junkies coming through and were super messy, littering their surroundings with junk.
Oh, the neighbors that everyone hates.
Yeah. A couple named Bill and Cindy Copeland rented the space next to them, and Billy later said that, quote, Lee had some cruel eyes, death row eyes, I call them. I don't know what that means, but that's just the way they make you feel. I know that girl could kill you in a heartbeat, but I always liked her. So that's nice.
I always liked her, though. I wonder if he thought if he called her having death row eyes before she was on death row, or if,
after.
Yes,
or
I'm curious.
Yeah,
about
I am too.
Yeah, because I mean, he might have said like she looks like she could kill you, but
Yeah.
I don't know if he was like she's got death row eyes. I've seen it. I said it since I seen her. I don't know.
Things at the trailer park came to a head during the early hours of one morning when a volley of shots echoed around the site, and the neighbors were subjected to very loud country rock music coming from Tyria's and Aileen's trailer.
Oh, that's it for me. I'm serious.
I'm
Whatever
done.
else, yeah, the country, get out of here now.
Not country rock, girl.
Oh gosh, I don't even know what that means.
I
to
don't
be
either.
honest.
They were, of course, ordered to leave immediately. So from there, they returned to Dayton, where Aileen was soon thereafter cited, using the alias Susan Blahovic for walking on the interstate, and they processed a suspended license.
She's not allowed to walk around with a suspended license?
I guess not. No, I guess not on the interstate.
Okay.
From then, it's not really known what happens to their trailer. Maybe they sold it. Maybe they wrecked it.
Maybe they pushed it into a lake with another body in it.
Right.
Who knows?
Who knows? And it was about this time that Aileen started hitching rides. We talked about the bus incident last episode where she got kicked off, but that wasn't the only case. There was another time with another bus driver who said, quote, when she was at the bus stop, she would say, "Kneel the fucking bus, you asshole." Or she'd call him the N-word, or she'd call him a cocksucker.
Great.
Aileen was always trying to pick fights.
I mean, God, she is such a pain in the ass.
She
dude.
kind of is, yeah.
She's a complete and total, born from birth, pain in the ass.
Yeah, absolutely.
Born from birth.
Oh, was she born from birth?
Born
actually?
from birth, a pain in the ass.
Although she was always trying to pick fights with men, she often said she actually liked sex with them.
Well, who doesn't, man? I'm just kidding. There's a lot of you that don't.
There's a lot of you that
I know.
don't.
I'm just kidding.
Her sex life with Tyria eventually waned enough for her to complain to her best friend Dawn about it. Aileen said that her love for Tyria wasn't sexual. The real driving force in Eileen's life wasn't sex at all. It was just a search for an emotional bond and love.
Oh my God, though. You know what? I was thinking that earlier when I was reading about them. I was like, you know what? She just needed companionship. That's all that she really needed.
Yeah.
So it was just like me with every girlfriend that I had. I didn't really want anything but companionship with them, you know? But, cause then I was like, oh, you know, that's not really my thing, I don't think.
Yeah.
But like I very much related to this part of it. I was like, oh geez, she just needed a friend. And poor little Aileen, you know, I mean, she's a terrible, terrible wretch. But she definitely just needed somebody. And that's like everyone's problem most of the time. People that kill people, go on mass murderous rampages. Most of the time, I feel like when it comes down to it, if they just had, it doesn't have to be sexual, but if they just had somebody to like
understand.
Care about them, understand them, have empathy, I think things could be a lot different.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
I mean, the only people that we know that were friends were
Charles Ng
and
Leonard Lake.
Uh-huh.
It's very funny you mention them right now.
Why?
Because I'm going to talk about them for Patreon.
Oh my God. Okay. Love that she never really had from her mother, who abandoned her and her brother, her grandfather, who was emotionally and physically abusive, her grandmother, who, although was more understanding, never really stood up for Aileen or protected her from Lori, and most certainly not from the young males who had had sex with her when she was just a child.
Let me just say, I'm sorry that I always start talking about what you're about to talk about.
It's
I
fine.
do it every time we record.
I like that. I don't know if you want to keep this in, but I actually really like that because it kind of shows that like you and I are always kind of thinking the same thing, like through my writing or through your writing. And I'm always like, oh,
yeah.
Like we always interject on each other on something we're about to say.
Yeah, we do.
Aileen was, of course, more familiar with loss. She had her only brother taken from her due to cancer, her son literally taken from her after giving birth, her mom abandoning her, and Tony up and leaving her were all cases of loss in Eileen's life that she never really seemed to truly recover from. And she found the bond and love she so craved with Tyria. Her borderline personality disorder also carried with it an intense fear of abandonment. Aileen would do anything to keep her, even kill if needed. And so in love with Tyria was Aileen that she would even give up her life to protect her in the years that followed. Like we keep mentioning, Eileen's market value as a sex worker was never really spectacular, but it fell even further. When she hit the road searching for Johns, she would pose as a hitchhiker, a disabled motorist, and even as a mother at highway on and off ramps. She became an exit-to-exit worker, and because money was so meager, their existence, already difficult enough, was even more difficult to maintain. They blew all of their money, and desperation crept in, often leading, of course, to a life in crime. Sometime during the Christmas of 1989, James De La Rosa picked up Aileen, who showed him a photo of 2 children. She said she was a high-class call girl and pulled from her bag a plastic case with business cards. She told him, "These are some of my customers," which, if you remember, the business cards were her ex-husband's.
Yeah.
James felt like she wasn't spilling the real tea with him, and Aileen quoted him $100 for sex in a motel, $75 for sex in the woods, and $30 for oral in the car. She actually kept these rates until she was arrested. She noted...
I'm sorry, but that is just not worth it.
It's not enough.
Get a little more.
Yeah, it's not enough for me. She noticed that James looked like he had money, and she told him she preferred the woods most. He declined her very generous offer, and she became agitated, moving jerkily, bouncing in her seat, and angry. He just testified later that her demeanor changed tremendously. He dropped her off near an interstate, where she slammed the door and stormed off.
Well, that guy got off lucky as hell.
Well, she didn't kill all of her Johns.
Yeah.
She had
clearly.
Lot of,
she needed money.
Lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, she needed money.
Yeah, but, I mean, soon after, she begins a murderous rampage that goes on almost monthly. So, let's get into that. December 13th, 1989, in Daytona Beach, Florida, James Jano Davis and Jimmy Bonchi were scavenging the woods for scraps of metal or other items that they could sell to the junkyard when they encountered the sickly sweet stench of death. They thought they were going to come across a dead animal, but were horrified to discover a dead and blackened hand had emerged from... It didn't just emerge, but it was emerging.
They carried it.
It's not a zombie.
It's not Carrie.
No. It was emerging from a rolled-up carpet on the forest floor. The men quickly made the mile trek to the gas station because back then there was no cell phones, and they called the Volusia County Sheriff's Department, and within 20 minutes they were sitting in the back of Deputy Melody's cruiser giving witness statements, and Major Case Unit Investigator Larry Horzeppa arrived at the scene thinking he had a pretty good idea who the John Doe was. 12 days earlier, a Cadillac had been found abandoned, backed into a fire trail amongst some palmettos. Sergeant John Bonavere called the license plate in and found the car belonged to a Richard Mallory of Clearwater, Florida. The keys were not found, but scattered just to the east of the car were a wallet containing Mallory's driver's license, some papers, 2 tumblers, a half-empty bottle of vodka, and condoms that were half buried in some sand. The police were unable to locate Mallory at the time. Back to the body. The head, neck, and portions of the arm were decomposed and crawling with maggots, and there was no longer hair on the skull. The pathologist later found 3 .22 caliber bullets, 2 which had ripped through the man's lungs. He likely spent 10 to 20 minutes desperately trying to breathe as he died. And that we'll see this as we go along, that Aileen does not like to give somebody a kill shot necessarily. She's like, shoots him 17 times in the stomach, and then she's like, see ya. So it's terrible. After removing the hands and soaking them in a saline solution for about an hour, they were able to lift fingerprints off of the man's hand because otherwise it was going to be too desecrated, I guess, to be able, they had to kind of like liven up the finger in order to get a fingerprint. So they identified the body to be Richard Mallory, whose truck had been found weeks earlier. And detectives learned from a local man who took a daily walk on the same route every day that Mallory's Cadillac hadn't been parked on the fire trail the morning of December 1st, which meant that sometime during the day, whoever had killed him drove his car and parked it in the shining light of day and left it there. Very much Aileen boldness. After looking into Richard Mallory, investigators were able to paint a better picture of the man who had been murdered. The biggest pieces of info that they learned were that Mallory was extremely paranoid, as well as being a convicted rapist. He had changed the locks at his apartment 8 to 10 times in the prior 3 years, and he didn't have any friends. He was very, very, very into pornography and the topless bar scene. When he was in the strip clubs, he flashed a lot of money around. He tipped big, and he reportedly drank a lot. A former employee of his who had worked with him up until about 6 months before his death said that Mallory was mental. At his electronics shop, they had found hundreds of back orders piled up. He owed over $3,500 in late rent and had even more porn stacked up inside the shop. They decided the only thing he was serious about was that sweet, sweet puss, and they knew that was where they would find the answer to what had killed him. Mallory's former employees said that he had a very erratic system with his business, that he would take a bunch of orders, hire workers to clear all those orders, and then he would fire them, and that was kind of what he would do every single time he needed money. He did this because he would regularly go on benders where he would drink excessively, would smoke dope.
That devil's lettuce.
I'm like, does that mean that it's
jazz cabbage?
Is that the weed that we're talking about, or is dope something else?
Oh, actually, I think dope is not. No.
I think it's kind of unanimous or ubiquitous among, it's kind of like you can use it for anything.
Yeah, yeah.
So who knows what dope was, but
maybe it was jazz cabbage. Honestly, I think I had read in my book that Mallory, when this happened, he had lit a joint on his way up to Daytona and had offered Aileen some weed.
Oh.
So I think in this context, we're talking about weed.
That's my kind of hitchhike.
Hell yeah.
Okay.
That's kind of my kind of
except for the murder.
Except for the weed, because I don't smoke weed. I'd murder people, but no weed.
Okay. Oh, dear. So on these benders, he would also go to strip clubs and party hardy. He would take days and weeks off of work at a time. There was no order to any of it. Sounds like the world's worst boss, I would say. His ex-girlfriend corroborated the erratic lifestyle and said that as a 17-year-old, he had gone to prison for burglary, and shortly after getting out, he went into a program for a sexual disorder, which made me wonder if that was really why he went to prison in the first place, for burglary.
A sexual disorder?
Yeah.
What?
I don't know. Sexual, probably being a rapist. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The disorder of being a rapist. The detectives interviewed a slew of women whose info they found in Mallory's home. Mallory was a fixture at the strip clubs in the area, the women saying that he was there all the damn time. He always had over $150 to spend, and he spread it around freely. He often tried to get the women to come home with him so that they would have sex, where he would then pay them with cash, but sometimes he would top it off with TVs, VCRs, and other little gadgets like that.
Beautiful.
Which the detectives would later discover, mysteriously, all had their serial numbers removed. So he was just stealing from the people who came to get their stuff repaired. But he had the number of multiple exotic dancers in his home, all who knew him well and had slightly evasive stories, possibly because they were engaging in illegal activities together. And after extensive questioning and chasing down leads that developed from them, the police were left with nothing but dead ends. Though the guy was sex crazed and erratic and essentially a victim waiting to happen, and it was pretty obvious that his death had to have something to do with his penchant for women and the careless way that he went about getting, again, that sweet, sweet puss.
I don't know that he was a victim waiting to happen. I actually am on the opposite spectrum here, where I think that he was a predator waiting to happen. You know what I mean?
Well, I think he was a predator.
He was a predator.
But I also think that, I guess just according to the dancers who would go home with him, he was just like so fucked up and just wanted to have sex, and he would bring them into their house that if they wanted to set up something, they could have. But you are right in the same vein that who knows what else he did to people that didn't say anything about him.
Right.
Yeah. And he is a convicted rapist.
Right.
And he has a quote unquote sexual disorder of being a rapist. So, So, for the time being, they were SOL, and for the murders, Aileen was nowhere on their radar.
So for this particular victim, my personal belief is that something actually did happen. Something actually did happen where he was trying to fuck her over.
Mallory?
Yes.
Okay.
On the money that she was owed, or that he was trying to rape her, or was violent with her, or something like that. Because a lot of these dancers' stories did say that A, he was sad, and B, sometimes he was a little bit aggressive.
Okay.
So that is on this particular murder, not on the next ones.
Okay. We'll give her a little pass on Mallory.
I give her a small pass.
What was the other thing that I was thinking about him and her? Oh, well, if he was trying to say, oh yeah, I'll pay you $100, and then he's like, wait, I'll give you $50 after the fact. I'll give you $50 in a tape recorder. She might have been like, go fuck yourself.
Bye.
And then he's like, bitch.
Yeah, because he was so used to giving that to people that took it.
And they're just going to be like, I just want to get out of here. Because I think that's kind of how it was. They were just like, I just want to leave this fucking place because he's a creep. Because he was a psycho. Okay, so her next victim was a 43-year-old Bradenton, Florida man named David Spears. David was a construction worker and a heavy equipment operator who, you guessed it, had a penchant for strip clubs and sex workers.
I mean, but is it so shocking that they would have a penchant for sex workers if they're picking up a sex worker?
Well, that's why I said you guessed it. So David was last seen leaving his work on May 19th, 1990. A few days later, his boss, Robert Kerr, and his wife found David's truck on the side of I-75, 20 miles south of Gainesville, Florida, as they were driving back from Tennessee. Upon closer inspection, the truck had a flat tire, a window was rolled down, the doors were unlocked, and it was missing its license plate, which, again, that's
a huge red flag.
That's very strange, bad, and Aileen is written all over it. Kerr said Spears was supposed to be heading to Orlando when he left work the last day that he was seen. He said he had to chase a handful of employees out of the parking lot who were just hanging around drinking, and Spears was one of them. He said he would have had around $400 to $500 on him when he left that day. Exactly 1 month later, his body was discovered in the scrub woods that ran along the Chassahowitzka National Wildlife Refuge on Florida's Gulf Coast. The man was completely nude except for a baseball cap. He was sprawled on his back with his arms stretched wide. The body was partially decomposed. He had no external ears. He was missing genitalia and skin, and it was simply bone in many places. Upon taking an x-ray of the body, they discovered 6 small caliber bullets scattered about his chest, clavicles, and spinal column, in addition to his side.
Again, not trying to have a kill shot here. We're just trying to just spray and pray.
Just like, it was very much like just angrily just letting that gun loose.
Jesus.
So I think that maybe I should also say, like, I just realized, so the way that I took this is how I'm interpreting, this is how I tell a serial killer story. I don't really talk about her that much as like the main character. I just realized that. So I didn't really think about it until just now that I have been really focusing on the victims, which I just realized.
Well, I'm super interested in the psychological aspect. That's why I like true crime, is because I'm so interested in the psychological aspect of serial killers and why did they do this and what happened. Not that just because you have a really terrible childhood, it's okay that you go out off and kill these people.
Yeah.
I personally don't think it is just something that you're born with. I think it is a matter of how were you, what formed during your childhood that caused you to be
for sure.
You know.
Yeah, it's nature and nurture.
So I'm more of a nurture, I guess, type of person where I think that. So I think that's why you're right. That's why you don't like doing serial killers, because I don't think you're interested in that aspect.
I'm interested in the psychology, but that's about it. I don't really want to talk about her that much.
Yeah,
like other than what happened in her formative years and then maybe like the way that she talks later. But I don't, as far as her murders, I don't really care. I guess I just don't care to think about the way that she felt during it, I guess.
That's fair.
Yeah,
and that's totally fair.
I just don't like them, I guess. I don't know. I just don't like them.
That's totally fair.
Anyway, I'm going to continue on. The skeletal remains were sent to acclaimed forensics anthropologist, Dr. William Maple's lab, so that he may possibly be able to help identify the body, which they were able to do.
And while all this was going on, yet another nude male's body was found off of I-75 just north of the Florida state line at the Georgia border. The body was badly decomposed and became yet another John Doe. So on June 6th in Pasco County, and it was just 30 miles from where the nude baseball cap wearing John Doe was found, there was even another body of a man found under a green electric blanket amongst some weeds just a few miles from I-75. The body had been riddled with 9.22 caliber bullets.
We're seeing a damn pattern here.
The 22s. Also, the bodies are riddled. The body was so badly decomposed that the medical examiner could only estimate the time of death to be between 5 days to 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Even the bullets had deteriorated. Which makes sense, I guess, in the Florida humidity.
Yeah.
Maybe they start deteriorating a little bit faster because of the humidity.
Yeah.
This man would later be identified as Charles Carskaden, who was a 40-year-old part-time rodeo worker.
Yeehaw.
Although there were now 3 incredibly similar homicides within a very short time of each other, they happened in different jurisdictions. Thus, no serial killer alarm went off at the law enforcement clubhouse yet. Tom Muck, investigator for Pasco County, was of the opinion that there was a homosexual angle to the murders. There was, but not in the way that he thought.
What do you mean? Oh, okay.
The men were found nude, overkilled, and et cetera, et cetera. So he started to think maybe passion was the motive, possibly even hatred.
Ding, 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 ding.
I mean, he got it, but he didn't really get it.
Yeah. But it's definitely hatred motivated.
For sure.
Yeah. On July 4th, 1990, in Orange Springs, a Florida community in the Ocala National Forest, Aileen and Tyria got in a car accident going around a sharp turn, ending up in some brush on the side of the road. A woman named Rhonda Bailey, along with her husband and cousin, lived in a house across the road, and they were sitting out on the porch at the time of women's accident. They said they heard tires screeching, a bunch of hollering, and the women were throwing beer cans out the window into the woods and everywhere. Oh my goodness.
My God.
This is just their...
Why am I imagining, what is his name from...
Some Yosemite Sam?
I'm totally imagining Yosemite Sam just throwing beer cans for some reason.
They are a walking cloud of disorder.
Jesus
you know what I mean?
Christ.
Everywhere they go, they're just shouting, yelling obscenities, throwing beer cans to and fro. I mean, that is a nightmare. I mean, that's what they were like in their trailer park. That's where they're like here. They just like traveling around, throwing beer cans and yelling and screeching and getting in accidents. They just sound, oh my God, they were nightmares. Guess what Aileen is? A real pain in the ass.
I was like, what?
They said that the family, the Baileys, they said the blonde woman, Aileen obviously, had blood running down her arm and was cursing at the brunette, being very rude and degrading, telling her that she told her not to go so fast. And all the while, the brunette just never even said a word, just sat there and took all of Eileen's degrading. Yes. So I love that she tries to play. I mean, of course she was at one point a victim, and I love that she tries to play it all the time, because it looks to me like, from outside sources, she was abusive to everybody she was with.
She was just abusive.
She was a tyrant.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Not like me.
Kind of like Ashley.
No,
it's fine.
not like me.
It's fine, everybody. I'm fine.
Shut up.
See, you guys.
So Aileen rushed over to the family and pleaded with them not to call the police, telling them that her father lived just up the road. And Rhonda offered them to use her telephone to call for help, but they refused and headed up the hill on foot. Just can't take help when it's offered.
No.
I mean, I guess who would you have called because you're an outlaw?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
So never mind. She should, but she just, like, don't get in an accident, you little idiots. You know? With yourself. That was it. You got in an accident by yourself. So the family said that a little while later, the two women came racing back down the road, hopped in the car, and managed to get it going and out of the brush, the broken windshield and all, with a terrible rattling racket.
Oh, my God.
So they probably went up the hill, robbed somebody, and ran away to escape them, managed to get in their car and drove off. Later that afternoon, a man named Harmon Jeter spotted Aileen and Tyria carrying a cooler between them and walking down State Highway 315 because they have their priorities straight of always. That cooler is it right there. He stopped to give the women a ride, and they said they had gotten in a car accident and were headed to Daytona. He said that Aileen obviously was bloody, and when he told them he wasn't going that far, he said Aileen became belligerent, saying, now, of course, when he was talking to the police, I'm saying it's Aileen because it is Aileen, but he didn't know. He was calling her the blonde-haired woman, and because he went to the police shortly after this because he was just like, what the fuck just happened here? He said, she got radical on me like, gee whiz, thanks a lot. We're out here and had an accident, and you won't even take us nowhere? Which,
oh, my God.
I mean, Aileen to a goddamn T
to a
right
T,
there.
like she's looking a gift horse in the mouth,
Yeah.
like
Gee
it's
whiz.
something. It's gee whiz. I mean, she's calling people the N-word and cocksucker, but this one was gee whiz.
Oh, gee
All right.
whiz, thanks a lot. What a psycho. Thinking the women may be injured and out of sorts, which they were definitely out of sorts, but they probably weren't that injured, Harmon called his brother Hubert. Those are some interesting age names
Harmon
they were given.
Hubert.
The chief of the volunteer fire department, who went on the search for the two women and found them shortly after still wandering down the side of the highway with that old cooler.
Oh, God.
He pulled up beside them and asked if they were in an accident, to which Aileen became enraged, saying, "No, where did you get that idea?" and began to rant and rave about people always lying to her, lying about the road, making up stories to get her in trouble. They didn't want his help, and to him, they seemed to be in a hurry to get on down the road.
Girl. What are you talking about? That would be the first thing that literally anybody would think, like, oh, did you get in an accident? I can help you out.
Making up lies.
I'm just trying to help you, sister.
Making up lies about me. She just is like little persecution complex.
Jesus
Christ. She cannot
She's
get
such
over
a
it.
victim.
I know. It's kind of annoying. It's a very annoying. She's a pain in the ass. Around this time, Marion County Sheriff deputies arrived to the scene of the women's likely second accident after they escaped the brush where they were in front of the family, hooting and hollering and pouring out their beer. And the police had found a gray 88 Pontiac Sunbird abandoned in a field. They said the car was trashed, the windows were broken, and it had, guess what, no license plates. They ran the VIN number for the car, and what do you know? They had a hit. The car belonged to Peter Seams. The missing person or endangered adult that had been reported pretty much the other day. just the other day from this point. Marion County Sheriff's investigators brought all the Orange County witness statements and transcripts to a woman named Beth Gee, or G, I don't know which, who was a forensic sketch artist, and soon a couple of bolos for Aileen and Tyria were sent to law enforcement agencies throughout Florida. And we're going to post them because they're beauts. They are some beautiful sketches. Upon hearing the news of the two women seen with Peter Seams' found vehicle, Detective Wiseneski of the Jupiter Police Department, who had been working on yet another John Doe case in Jupiter, Florida, put out a nationwide bolo for Peter Seams, describing the last times he was seen, where he was headed, what he was driving, and that two white females had been seen with his vehicle and were suspected of foul play involving Seams. Wiseneski clearly thought his John Doe could be Peter Seams. During the course of his investigation into Seams's disappearance, Wisniewski learned that he was a 65-year-old veteran merchant seaman. Get your minds out of the gutters. There's other types of seamen, guys. It's not just me. Who had retired just a year prior and had been working at a Christian outreach center called Christ is the Answer. His wife had been on a missionary trip in Germany at the time that he had packed up his car for a little road trip to New Jersey to visit his sister when he went missing. And scouring through his home for any clues yielded nothing conclusory that led them to believe he was planning anything other than the simple trip to visit his sister. They scoured his car for any prints that they may be able to use to either help them identify the women or give them a clue about what happened to Peter Seams. There were partial bloody prints, palm prints on the trunk and inside the vehicle, along with a ton of beer cans and koozies, yada yada. That's Aileen Wuornos. Yada yada. Wisniewski did all his due diligence, and with all his investigative materials and evidence that he had gathered in this investigation into Seams's disappearance, he sent every last bit of it to VICAP, which is the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, a program developed by the National Center for the Analysis of Violent Crime, which was started by the DOJ in 1984. Basically, information is funneled to VICAP through the FBI's Behavioral Science Unit in Quantico, Virginia, where it's processed for patterns of victimization, physical evidence, and modus operandi. They are basically only as good as the information that is given to them, and many law enforcement agencies don't provide them much. But, to Wisniewski's credit, he was on top of his shit, and VICAP received all of his investigation, essentially. Given the state of Seams's car and all the other circumstances, Wisniewski was fairly certain that Seams was not alive. Our next fella was 46-year-old Gilchrist sausage delivery man Troy Burris. He was last seen at 6:20 a.m. the morning of July 30th, and he headed out on his delivery route, which would take him through the Ocala Forest, an area we have mentioned a few times already. When Burris didn't return to work at 4 that afternoon, his boss called the Salt Springs grocery store, who told her that Burris never showed up that day. She waited until 7 p.m. and then went out to search for him with her husband, backtracking his route, but came up with nothing. At 2 a.m. that morning, Burris's wife called the police department to report him missing, and within 2 hours, his delivery truck was spotted on the side of State Road 19, just past the intersection of Highway 40, 20 miles east of the Ocala Forest. And we know that Aileen likes to troll the highways. Mm-hmm. She's a highway lady. The Marion County deputy who found the truck, Dennis Chesner, ran his hand along the hood of the car, and it was cold and wet from dew. The doors of the truck were locked, and there were no keys in the car. Investigator John Tilley was assigned to the case, and after putting out a bolo on Burris in both the National Crime Info System and the Florida Criminal Info Systems as missing and endangered, he got to work. He was on his way to examine Burris's found truck when he was told that it had been returned to the Gilchrist Sausage Company, and was severely disappointed to find that all the evidence that it may have contained had been contaminated, which is quite frustrating. The sheriff's department set out on horseback, spread over a 4-mile radius from where Burris's truck was found, aided by a helicopter who accompanied them. By 11 p.m., they had found nothing, and the search was called off. Tilley contacted Burris's wife, who said that they were married 16 years without any issues, and he had no medical issues or anything otherwise that would explain a sudden disappearance. But after speaking with other family members and friends, Tilley learned that Burris had a girlfriend elsewhere in the state, and had at one point been married to someone else, had 2 kids with her, and just, quote, up and disappeared one day. So, upon speaking further with Mrs. Burris, Tilley learned that the man had recently sold a, quote, thriving swimming pool business in Delray Beach because he couldn't stand all the hustle and bustle of the city. The man who had bought it from him still owed him most of the money, which was a whopping $24,000, and was running the business into the ground, unable to make anything, let alone pay Burris what he was owed. She said that they were pretty tight financially, but nothing that would make him run off.
After interviewing the proprietors at Burris's first few stops the morning he disappeared, Tilley got conflicting reports. Some said he was acting totally normal that morning, and others said that he seemed to be acting unusual, complaining about the money he was losing on selling his pool business. I mean, I would be constantly complaining about $24,000 also.
Me too.
He made his last stop at the Seville grocery store at 2:24 p.m., where he chatted to the owner for about 15 minutes, and when he left, he was supposed to head only 15 minutes west to Salt Springs for his last actual scheduled stop, but never arrived. His work records from that day showed that he collected $293.80 in cash. Later that evening, Tilly got a call that there was a witness who had picked up a hitchhiker near where Burress's truck had been abandoned the day he went missing. The man, Jesse Singletary, said he'd picked up a barefoot man wearing shorts and a multicolored shirt around 6:30 p.m. on the evening of August 30th and dropped him off at the Salt Springs campsite, something Tilly was able to confirm. According to the site manager, a man calling himself Blankenship paid cash for a tent, showed an Alabama license, and said he was a truck driver. Entering the license number and name into the NCIC brought back nothing. Troy Burress's sister, Letha, called the police frantic about what a psychic had told her. She said Burress had stopped for a lady or two men,
Either one.
one or the other, who had gone to Daytona Beach to buy drugs. She then said she saw Troy somewhere around Perry or Tallahassee, 70-ish miles northwest of Ocala. She said he was in a turquoise Pontiac, possibly stabbed, and there was a decent sum of money involved, $750 or so. Tilly took notes on the info, likely not to be dismissive, but as we know, psychics aren't really taken seriously with law enforcement, even though they're often used as last-ditch efforts in investigations into missing persons or cold cases.
And I will say, while I am also skeptical of this, and I'm sure there's plenty of people out there hoaxing their asses off, I watched a few things the other day about a few different police officers who were like, by damn, I used this lady. She was so persistent in telling me, and we were out of leads, and she knew everything. Last bit of information. This one lady identified the person who had abducted and murdered this girl by name almost.
Jesus. Oh, that's like Jody Husentroop. Somebody did the same thing with that.
Oh, yeah. But this one was actually later apprehended, and
Oh my
the name,
goodness.
she was like, it was
Yeah.
like literally the exact
Oof.
same thing. I was like, what? This is insane, because otherwise I would have been like, bullshit. But there was
Yeah.
cops, and they
Same.
were like, yes, yes, yes. It was crazy. So, I mean, sometimes they can know a little bit. It sounds like this lady was either a good guesser or she knew a few of the little bits of information about old Troy. So, a few days later, on August 4th, there was a family out in the Ocala forest for a picnic. I'm sure this is going to end well, when they noticed an incredible amount of ants furiously storming a collection of palmetto fronds that were scattered under a tree. Their curiosity turned to horror when they realized the ants were climbing up the bejeaned leg of a dead man. The body was in a clearing at the end of what locals called a pig trail just off Highway 19, which I believe we just spoke about a minute ago, about 8 miles from where Troy's truck had been found. He was lying face down. He was covered in ants, maggots, beetles, and flies. A quick ground search of the area turned up Troy's credit cards, receipts, his clipboard, and an empty plastic bank bag, which we know had about $293.80 in it before. While the condition of the body being so badly decomposed didn't allow for positive identification at the scene, the investigators were pretty positive that this was Troy's remains. Not only was the man wearing blue jeans and tan hush puppies, a gold wedding band, and a gold chain necklace, which Troy had last been seen in, but the name Troy was stitched into the front of the badly faded shirt. So
Was this Troy?
yeah, this might have been Troy. Mrs. Burress quickly identified the wedding band as being her husband's and gave investigators their dentist's info.
That's actually really sad.
It is definitely very sad. I mean, obviously.
I mean, but then also, why did he pick her up? Oh, but you know what? Maybe he was just trying to, maybe he was a nice guy and trying to be helpful. I don't know.
I think that some of these dudes really were just kind of, I think they were maybe just trying to pick her up to be helpful because it's a lady. And,
Right.
and there's like, they're thinking, oh, this poor lady. And she did have a knack for, she had stories. She was like conning these people. She was
Right.
like, look, these are my kids. I'm just trying to get to my kids and stuff like that. But then it inevitably turned to, hey, you want a blowjob or you want to go in the woods and have some sex for $75?
Well, and then who knows if maybe these guys, I'm sure these guys, she propositioned them and they were like, no, thank you. Or, you know, like maybe some of them were like, oh, no. I appreciate it, but I'll help you.
Yeah.
And she was like,
yeah, yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. The following day, the autopsy was performed and 2 bullets were found with the x-ray, one in the chest and one in the lower side of his back.
Jesus, just kill them.
No.
Just kill them.
No.
I mean, nicely. Not, don't kill them, but like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying like kill them, but like.
No, I was saying no sarcastically, like she's not going to just kill him quickly. But you're saying, but then I realized that you're thinking I'm saying like, no, don't kill him, don't kill him.
But
that
also
too.
don't kill them. But if you're gonna kill them, like just do it quick.
She just, I think she really, and I'll talk about it a little bit, but I do really feel like, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more later.
Yeah, we will.
Next episode. But she really liked to she liked to drag it out. She wants to make them feel what she feels inside. So their investigation quickly turned to a barefoot hitchhiker who was identified as the one we mentioned earlier, who was identified as Curtis Michael Blankenship, a white 25-year-old man who had stolen a truck in Ocala and fled to Indiana. So Curtis Michael Blankenship was found 4 days after Troy Burris's body was found, and Tillis then spent the remainder of the month questioning Blankenship, tracking his movements before and after Burris's murder, coming to the sad conclusion that the man was a small-time criminal who just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, hitching a ride beside a murdered man's truck.
No.
Which is, kind of amazing, but also just shit out of...
Yeah.
That's a shitty turn of luck there, buddy. So, let's move on now to September 11th, 1990. Never forget, I swear to God, I was about to type that in my notes, and then I didn't. I was like, I'll just say it.
See how you and I are always on the same page?
56-year-old Dick Humphreys said his goodbyes to all his coworkers at the Sumterville, Florida Health and Rehabilitative Services office. He was a retired Alabama police officer and had been transferred to the state's agency office in Ocala. Humphreys had been a married man of 30 years and was a supervisor for the protective investigators specializing in abused and injured children, and he was on his way home after stopping at a nearby police station to take a look at the autopsy report of a young boy when he met Aileen.
Oh, no.
Yep, she was, as usual, hitchhiking, and perhaps as a testament to her ability to con even the most discerning of individuals, he thought he saw a desperate pleading in her eyes that made him pick her up without thinking twice.
Oh, no. God, she's good.
Yeah. Once in the car, she began her manic chatter and had opened a Miller Lite before she finished her sentence asking if she could. She said she lived in town and had 2 kids, even showing him pictures, and ranted on about some money trouble she was in and was distressed about not being able to figure out how to pay her bills. She asked about Humphreys, who he was, what he did, and wasn't too excited when she found out that he had been a cop. I guess she missed the Florida State Troopers Association bumper sticker that he had on the back of his truck when he pulled up to give her a ride because she wasn't very observant, but, Then she went on about how she was a Christian, but that she had to do certain things for money, so it was $30 for head, $75 for straight-up sex. Just, the same sentence. When Humphreys told her, and this is, of course, in Eileen's words, because she later told this story. When Humphreys told her he wasn't interested in anything like that, just giving her a ride and heading home, and told her she should stop with that kind of talk for good, she pulled out her .22 revolver and pointed it straight at him. She told him where to exit, where to turn, and they ended up in an abandoned, half-finished residential development. Humphreys probably didn't expect the woman to actually go through with shooting him, but that's what she did. She riddled his body with bullets, killing him for good with a shot right against his head below his left ear, after she shot him like 17 times in his stomach. Then she stole his car. One of the responding officers thought they recognized Humphreys and called in one of his former coworkers who positively identified him.
I have a question.
Yes.
Because I actually don't know the timeline of the murders. Was this her final?
No.
This wasn't her final, but this is when they really start to get serious about finding this person?
Yeah, they start to kind of realize these are not unrelated, and because they're happening in so many different places in such close proximity to each other and in succession, they're like month after month there's another one, they start to think these could be tied together, they're not separate, we need to start talking to each other. We'll talk about it in a second.
It's interesting that, of course, he was a in law enforcement. Interesting.
I think that honestly this happens with a couple of her victims. I think that when she got picked up by anybody that was related to law enforcement in any way, she was like, this is one I'm gonna kill.
This is it. Yeah.
I'm gonna kill this fucking guy, because she hated him. It just made her furious, law enforcement. So, during his autopsy, all but one of the 7 bullets was found, and a bruise that was identified as the barrel of a pistol was left just under his ribcage. By this point, law enforcement in Florida and Georgia all began communicating with each other. This is just...
Of course.
As we do. There were at least 6 dead men murdered under incredibly similar circumstances, and even the most cautious among them couldn't help but wonder if they had a serial killer situation taking place. As we've seen many times before, law enforcement isn't always thrilled about sharing information, bringing in outside law enforcement to assist on difficult cases, and they are very territorial. But in the case of these missing men, the Florida law enforcement began to actually work together. They shared their investigative files with each other at the Florida Homicide Investigators Association meetings held in various counties. Detective Thompson, Paget, Tilley, Munster, Benniger, and David Taylor all took part in these meetings, and these are names that we will talk about now and later, and maybe have already talked about before, because they're going to be involved in the hunt for this little lady. I know it's a lot of names. Okay. I know it's a lot of names, but these are all the investigators in the case of the murdered men that were scattered across Florida and the one that was in Georgia as well. The men had come up with a short list of possible female suspects, and Detective Tom Muck voiced his opinion that there could be some kind of, again, homosexual angle to the murders, much to the dissent of the other detectives.
I mean, there was, but not in the way that he was thinking.
Yes, this Tom Muck is very stuck on that it's a homosexual man that's doing this. But he's clearly just off by one little gender situation. All the men were slightly dubious about the possibility that a woman could be their serial killer without the aid of a man. Typical men underestimating us. We can kill just as good as the rest of yous. But there were the sightings of Aileen and Tyria with Steams's car, and all the men but one had been killed by a shot to the chest or gut, which was more characteristic of a female shooter than a man, who typically go for headshots.
I wonder why that is.
I think it's just men are just like down to business. And maybe it's also a weird subconscious fear of killing them. Like, you don't want to do it. You don't want it to be immediate for some reason. You're like, I don't know. Maybe I'm being sexist with that.
You are being sexist against us. It's fine.
I'm like, God damn it, you men being sexist. And then I'm like, I'm being sexist myself. So, here.
It's fine.
They tracked various possible female suspects. Sex workers were high on the list due to the possibility of a sex angle, and also the fact that a few of the victims were regulars in strip clubs and connected with some of the dancers outside of the club. Check forgers, thieves, and women with histories of drug abuse with proclivities for committing crimes across the entire state of Texas. These were all their initial suspects. But it turned up no solid leads. In mid-October, detectives Munster and Jarvis got a call that police in Ocoee had discovered, that's in Florida, obviously, had discovered Dick Humphrey's badge, case, and ID in the Green Swamp area about 70 miles southeast from where his body was found. The next day, they were trudging through the swamp, donned in waders, searching for any other discarded evidence. They found Humphrey's gold tobacco bag, his pipe, some HRS documents with his name on it, and a crumpled Florida State Trooper Association bumper sticker, and 2 empty beer cans, 1 Miller Lite and 1 Bud. They also found an old worn army jacket that was buried in the sand with 2 bullet holes through the collar with dark brownish stains. Taylor and Munster noted that it appeared like someone tossed the items out of a moving vehicle onto the both shoulders of the road. Who could that have been?
I have no idea.
Later that evening, Munster got a call at home that Humphrey's Oldsmobile had been impounded in Live Oak, Florida, over 200 miles from where his ID had been found earlier in the day. He was told the car had been spotted on the 19th, but hadn't been impounded until the 25th. Munster and Taylor drove the 200-plus miles to Live Oak, and once there, they took a look at the vehicle. 2 of the VIN numbers had been removed, all the bumper stickers were removed, and the car looked like it had been wiped down with something that left white streaks everywhere. Inside the car, the ashtray was filled with cigarette butts, and Humphreys did not smoke cigarettes. And there were empty Busch Light cans scattered in the back. Why are you going to wipe the car down and then leave beer cans and
everywhere?
Cigarette butts?
What's wrong with you?
This is just ridiculous. What a slop. The seat was pushed up as far as it would go, and the rearview mirror was angled down, indicating that the last driver was very short. The car was left just before an exit ramp, and there was not much in the way of other evidence around it. They had the car shipped back to Marion, Florida, so they could comb through it more thoroughly. The only business around was a truck stop, Parnell United 500. The owner, Ida Parnell, said that the only female she remembered coming in was a woman about a month earlier. She was carrying a tote bag and wearing a dress. At one point, she got up, went to the bathroom, and came back wearing shorts. She said that she never said a word to her, and the woman left. There was a payphone outside the truck stop, and the detectives called the phone company and requested a copy of all the phone calls made from the payphone from 9/11 to 9/19, thinking, since she was all the way up in Live Oak, she may have needed to call someone for a ride. Back in Marion, before Munster and the Citrus County detectives took a look at Humphrey's car, Munster wanted to re-examine Peter Seams's car, which had been stored in a barn since July when it was found. Again, all the bumper stickers had remained on the vehicle, but a dealer sticker had been removed. There were cigarette butts, again filling the ashtray, just like Humphrey's. Under the seat was a bottle of Windex and an unopened can of Bud. She had a liking for that old Bud Light.
God damn,
or not Bud Light.
Was it Bud or like
Budweiser?
Was it Budweiser or was it Bud?
She drank. Well, is there a Bud that's not Budweiser?
Well, no, Bud is like weed.
Oh, it was an unopened can of Bud.
Bud Light. Or Budweiser. Fuck me.
The Windex had a sticker from Eckerd Drugstore on it, for anyone that remembers that old place.
I don't.
You don't? That was
I don't know
what
that
like
place.
CVS was before it was CVS.
Ah.
The price,
My age.
The price sticker was tracked to an Eckerd in Atlanta, and the date of sale was around February 1990. Seams's sister-in-law was called, and she said to her knowledge, Seams was never in Atlanta and most definitely wasn't there in February of 1990. This is some like old-fashioned tracking down Windex.
Yeah, no kidding.
Shit. At the same time, investigators found a receipt in Humphrey's car for Emrose Speedway dated 9/11/1990. Emro was just across the street from the Journey's End Motel in Wildwood, which was the last place that Humphreys had been seen before he was killed, as he was there investigating a case of child neglect the day that he disappeared, which is really sad.
Yeah, that is sad.
He was actually,
Really trying to be-
by all reports, a good dude.
Yeah.
The investigators had a few key pieces of evidence in each of the killings. Cigarette butts, beer cans, pieces of paper, a few condoms, abandoned vehicles, and 6 dead bodies. But they didn't exactly provide them with a definitive answer of who was committing these murders. That said, there was a pattern emerging. Not of sex, as they'd previously suspected, but of straight-up murder. It seemed that the perp's main objective was to kill these men, nothing more, nothing less. There was no obvious motive, as robbery seemed to just be an after-the-fact perk. The murders occurred almost monthly, and there was a bit of a cooling-off period between them. The killer seemed to actually derive pleasure from murdering the men, having gone way overboard with the amount of gunshots they inflicted upon them, not just being satisfied with 1 or 2 shots to kill them. That said, with Humphreys, the latest victim, the killer seemed to have escalated things a bit with their quote-unquote kill shot to the head, where before the shots had been solely to the torso. Also, the fact that Humphreys had received a shot so close to his heart also indicated that the killer was finding enjoyment in humiliating the man and having control over him, almost a sort of intimacy. These were the telltale signs of a serial killer, and this time they were treading new territory, as this killer was a female.
Ooh. 'Cause this is ladies' night.
We're the worst.
This is terrible. We're the worst people who exist.
So now that brings us to around November 17th, 18th, 1990. Tyria was getting sick of Eileen's shit. Her moods were all over the place. She was going around killing dudes and taking their cars, and worst of all, the two had completely stopped having sex.
That is the worst of all. Overkilling dudes.
Murder be damned. I need to get laid. She planned to go visit her family in Ohio for Thanksgiving and was then going to come back and gather her gubbins, and she was going to peace out.
I'm sorry. Wait.
Yes.
Sorry. Hi. What are gubbins?
You just think about it for a second, and you kind of like, oh, her gubbins.
Nope.
All her stuff.
That doesn't make sense to me at all.
I was kind of wondering when I read about it. I was like, why would she not just take her stuff? But I guess it would just be obvious. She just wants to delay it, I think. Like, she doesn't want to just be like, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
She wants to just be like, I'm going
going
away. I'm
home
going to
and
see how it
I'm
goes.
gonna-
And I'm come back and I'm going to get my stuff.
Yep. I just don't know where gubbins comes from. I don't know.
I've
Is
heard
that a
it.
southern thing?
Nope.
You heard it?
I heard it up here.
Up here?
And I'm not even sure if I'm using it right, but I liked it, so I'm using it now. So, while she was away, Aileen got the last homicidal hair up her ass. Early in the evening of likely November 18th, Aileen stood under an overpass on I-75, bitching to herself about how everyone always fucks her over and betrays her.
Oh my god.
And once again, it had happened with Ty. Ty was getting a full-fledged Thanksgiving meal, and here she was, an abandoned, sad sack kicking rocks under the highway, about to commit murder. Though, to be fair, I do see how her formative life experiences would have given her her severe abandonment issues. And, I can see, if I was left on Thanksgiving, maybe I would be like, God, why'd you do it? But
Yeah.
But I still just, she's
Also,
such a
I'm not
pain-
killing people.
I'm not
is
killing
the
people.
Is the issue.
And I'm not a little pain in the ass
Right.
quite like that.
Right,
I'm a
right,
pain
right.
in the ass. I
Oh,
know.
for sure.
But not quite like
Not
that.
like that.
Eventually, an old maroon Grand Prix pulled up beside her, and inside of it was a 65-year-old security guard and reserve police officer, Gino Antonio. She asked where he was headed, to which he told her Birmingham. She flashed a fake smile and told him that her stop was just along that way, and showed him a picture of 2 blonde kids. I gotta pick up my kids in Perry, just let me ride along. The two talked as they went along, and Gino loosened up a bit, flashing Aileen a badge that might have sealed
Damn
his
it.
fate. She sneered, hoping he didn't catch it, and began to go over her laundry list of reasons that she hated cops. But the two drove on and cracked open a case of Budweiser as they did.
Okay.
After they had put away about 2 6-packs between the two of them,
Jesus Christ.
Aileen was able to convince Gino to have a little fun. He wanted to find a motel, but she convinced him that her favorite spot to fuck was in the woods with wide open spaces and sky above your head. It had nothing at all to do with there being no witnesses for miles.
Oh, yeah, I don't think so. You're right.
She bragged to him, "Hell, I know." Is she country?
I don't know. No,
Not
she's
really.
actually from Michigan.
Hell, I know every back road from Cedar Key to St. Augustine, which I was like, ooh, who's the bad bitch now? Like, what a thing to brag about. I know every back road from here to there. She told him to turn down a desolate logging road, and once he'd driven down it away, she handed him some Trojans and had him get out of the car and take off all his clothes.
All of his clothes?
Yeah, which I have to say, even under those circumstances, I find mildly suspicious.
Well, there I am, just completely being like, oh my gosh,
Yes.
the next thing you're going to say, and then you say the thing. Yeah, there it is.
It's a recipe for disaster, I must say. I've been in one situation where all of a sudden I turned around and the person I was with had their clothes off.
Completely?
It was a sexy situation.
I'm sure.
It was just like, but it was like, what? Even in that situation, I was like,
Why are your clothes off? That's what I would think.
But it ended well. But anyway,
Well,
so
that's good.
But regardless, he didn't quite listen to her. Aileen was a creature of habit. She was a creature of habit. She was a creature of habit, and she pulled the pistol out of the bag that was under her seat, hopped out of the car, and made her way over to Gino, pointing the gun directly at his chest.
Oh, sad.
I know. Gino was clearly distraught and asked her what she was doing as he backed away from her and across the street. She angrily ordered him to get to strippin', cop, and Shirley went on a bit of a trademarked Aileen rant about how he was a fucking cop, trying to fuck her over, always trying to fuck her over, everyone's fucking her over.
Everybody's fucking her over. Yeah.
According to Aileen, he tried to reason with her, told her she could take the car, they were all the way out in the middle of nowhere, and she could just leave him there and no one would be the wiser. Take the money and run, essentially. To which she replied, "No, motherfucker, get down on your knees." So at this point, she's a bit of a sadist, I would say.
Yeah, at this point, she's...
She's gotten past the point of defending herself.
Absolutely.
To this is in, even she later, we'll talk about it, but she even says, like, she got to be just a piece of shit about it. He started begging, which she took joy in. For Aileen, being on the other end of the abuse was something that she couldn't help but get a thrill from. And if you're honest with yourself, you can kind of see her position, how it could easily be the case if you were just continuously living in that mentality. But at the same time, it's no excuse. She said, "Not much without your clothes on, you old fuck. You know that? No badge, no gun. You ain't much at all. You know that?" Because she likes to repeat herself.
Of course.
And for the first time of all her victims, she put the gun to the back of his head and pulled the trigger. She repeated again, later telling how she heard his grumbling moans and grunts, and when it was all said and done, she had shot him 5 times in the head, picking up a row of dentures that had fallen into the dirt and laughing before she took off in his Grand Prix.
Oh, no.
On November 19th, Tampa Police Captain J.F. Smalls was out hunting. What are the fucking chances of this? When he discovered Gino Antonio's bullet-ridden body. 5 days later, Gino's Grand Prix showed up 215 miles southeast from the site where Aileen had killed him and just near his home.
Oh, no.
So, it's just typical of all her. She just has a very... She has a routine. I mean, she really does. And that's where we're going to end off. That's her last known victim. I don't know if she killed any more, but that's her last admitted and known victim. And that is where we end today's episode on Aileen Wuornos. Next time, we're going to talk part 3. This is a 3-parter.
Yeah.
Is this our first 3-parter together? This is our first 3-parter together. Oh my God.
Oh my gosh. I knew it was going to be a 3-parter.
Yeah.
I knew it. It's too much.
Yeah. I mean, we were literally thinking this was going to be 1 episode at one point. That's crazy.
We use a lot of people to think that.
Yeah.
Because I knew it was going to be at least 2. At the very minimum.
Okay.
She deserves it.
She deserves it. She deserves a lot of the pain in the ass.
She's such a pain in the ass.
She's dead now.
Well, yeah.
In case you didn't know that. Sorry
spoiler alert.
But, okay, yeah, thanks for listening, everybody. We appreciate it. Thanks for supporting all the people we talked about at the beginning of the episode. Stay safe and healthy and be kind to everyone when you go out. Try not to breathe on people.
Absolutely. Stay with your family, as we are your family now.
We are your family, and we'll be here for you.
Absolutely.
So, have a great life.
Have a great everything.
Creep it real.
Bye.